Brought to you by Spike Studio, it is the UKLUG 2012 Keynote. Warren Elsmore opens it, passes it off to Uffe Sorensen. Sorry for the local video. The HD video had a fan blowing on it, so we lost some of the audio. So the backup video it is.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to UKLUG 2012. Glad you all made it. We did push the start back a bit because I think quite a few people have got lost here in the city centre or fell off the Severn Bridge or something. But welcome to UKLUG 2012. Welcome to Cardiff. Anybody who speaks Welsh?
Right.
Right.
Right side government.
There you go. Welcome to Wales.
That means how are you? Welcome to Wales.
We'll teach you some Welsh while you're here. I hope you have a good couple of days in Cardiff. It's a lovely city. Lots of things to do, so if you're looking for things to do, please do let us know. But we've got a really good couple of days sessions lined up for you. Good things going on as well. We'll run through a little bit of housekeeping for you first. You are sitting in room 1 at the moment, and we have rooms 2, 3 and 4 which are on the top floor of the building. So there's obviously a staircase outside, there is a lift at that side of the building. The toilets you'll find on this side of the building, on each floor. In terms of timing, we've run this a little bit late. We'll run the next session a little bit late and eat into the coffee break. After that, we'd ask you to sort of try and keep the time. We try and pack in as much as we can. So please get to your sessions on time. Speakers will certainly appreciate that. We're not expecting a fire drill, because there are fire exits in this room. They're at the back, and upstairs they're also at the back, and then down fire exit. Internet access, for those of you that haven't worked that out already, courtesy of Cardiff University. The SSID is UKLUG, and if you look at your badge, in the bottom left and right hand corners, you've got the username and password. The username and the password are both case sensitive, so keep an eye on that. You should have access to most things, but it is a little bit restricted, obviously, so don't get mad. And for the first time this year, if you've looked in your bags, there is no agenda in your bag. We are not printing an agenda this year. We've gone all paperless, kind of. So if you scan that QR code or go to m.uklug.info on your phone, you'll find a nice HTML5 app which has all of the agenda in, and you can see all the speaker bios and all the sponsor information. Or if you go to uklug.info/unplugged, Team Studio have actually created an unplugged version of our app that runs the conference. We run the whole event on the website that you registered on through a Notes X-Pages app, by the way. And yeah, if you don't have a smartphone, well, tough, really. Talking of sponsors, though, we'll say a big thank you to all of our sponsors who are outside in the showcase. Do spend a bit of time talking to these guys and seeing what they've got to offer. The only reason we can put this on and make it free is because of the sponsors' help. So do try and spend some time with them. And a couple of things not to miss. This evening we are doing speed sponsoring. Has anybody not been to speed sponsoring or speed geeking session before? No? Excellent. Well, you'll know it's good fun and there is free beer. And after that we have a party that's being hosted by Team Studio as well, with more free beer, or wine or soft drinks should be good. So hopefully you'll have a really good couple of days, but I'm now going to introduce our keynote speaker, Uffe Sorensen, who is the social business director. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good morning. Do I need the microphone?
Yes.
Good. We'll keep the microphone on there. I can't really hear from here. So anyway, it is my pleasure being here this morning. I was sort of thinking a lot about what would be the appropriate topics to go through in speaking to the UKLUG user group. And I decided that I thought rather than just doing a boring presentation about some functions or some roadmaps or products and stuff like that, I would like to do a slightly different view that says, let me try to go through with you guys my thinking and what I have observed and learned from working with IBM acquired it in 1995, actually before we acquired it. And some of all the thinking that went on and looking at what was this business that was created over the past 15, 20 years. What is it? What is it composed of? What are the risks that threaten this business right now? Where are we going and why we're doing some of the things we're doing from an IBM and certainly also trying to solicit some view and advocacy in the whole community about the next steps that we should take as a community around this type of technology. All technology goes in waves. Maybe I need to do something magic here. No. Okay, magic. Maybe it's a question of looking at where should the technology be going, what should we be doing, what should we drive as a community, because we have gone through a number of waves, and technology comes in cycles, we'll talk about that, and we certainly need to look at what are the next inflection points in the business around collaboration tools such as Notes and Domino. But I thought it would be worthwhile to understand a little bit of the background that went into this. For my own view, I was with IBM for about 25 years when we came in a situation that we applied Lotus. So by now, I've been with IBM for 42 years, which is quite a lot longer than a lot of people have been in this business. And it sort of has allowed me to see a number of technologies come and go. And I have had the interesting privilege of being part of some of the early interactive work that happened. If someone knows about something called APL, you will know that back in the late 60s, there was a very, very productive set of tools for rapid application development, for having people communicate with one another, for building applications for teams of people. That started off in about 66, 67, and lasted until about the late 70s when that technology had sort of exhausted itself. Then we latched onto other technologies related to doing email, doing calendaring type stuff around mainframes and other things, and that then was eclipsed by what we started doing with Lotus. And the question now is, what's happening to this technology that then came in here, the Notes and Domino stuff, where's that going? So anyway, back in the early 90s, IBM was faced with an interesting dilemma, because we were sort of in the middle of a perfect storm, if you will, because we sat with a number of technologies that we were trying to push and trying to make sure that we sort of contained the very, very aggressive onslaught from Microsoft on the desktop. IBM introduced OS2, and we're trying to push that as an operating system for PCs. And it had its virtues, it had its drawbacks, and you all know history advantage from the market again. But it was an attempt at a time to build another operating system for the desktop world. The problem with it was that the software always demanded way more hardware to run than hardware to deliver. I mean, I've never seen a situation where software does not get underwhelmed by hardware, and that was also the case with OS2. We had built something in IBM called Office Vision that was a set of Office tools in terms of providing email management, calendaring management, level of document management, and so forth. And it was centered around the whole range of processors that IBM provided, either mainframes or departmental processors, and for that matter, PCs. But it was a very big threat to IBM at the time, looking at what was happening, and we were seeing Windows 95 coming out, we were seeing a whole raft of things suddenly encroaching on us. And we had to do something, because we could not allow abandoning the whole desktop, or abandoning what we believe would be the future user interface to one company. We could not have someone completely monopolize that. So we looked at a lot of things, building stuff. There were a lot of interesting projects and plans for building products. I was myself, I've been in various aspects of the business. I've been in development, product management, whatever. But part of the development side of me was that I was actually heading up the first development project in IBM that used object-oriented technology. That in itself was quite an interesting challenge, because we're trying to build this OS2 version of an Office desktop, and it was an interesting project. We did make it, it worked, but there's no way to buy hardware enough to run it. Then came a new version of Uffe being the IBM CEO after this near-death experience that IBM went through in the early 90s also. And Lou Gerstner came in 93, and someone got this idea that if we cannot build it, we're going to buy it. And there was a very, very new wind blowing in the senior executives in IBM, so the idea of hostile takeover was actually not far away. So we were looking around for saying that, okay, if we can't build it, we're going to buy it. What are we going to buy? And we looked at many things, but we had read this interesting, well, sort of trying to figure out this is actually a true picture from a wood in Denmark. I have no idea what I'm supposed to do here, but that's sort of the situation we were in. I still don't know what these are supposed to be, but they're there. So whichever way you go the right way. So what happened was that we read this interesting article. There was a report published in 1994 by Scott McCready, who was an analyst working for ITC. And it was a little paper, had a title of Lotus Notes, The Agent of Change. And we read that a couple of times, and obviously also spoke with some businesses like Buzz Waterhouse, that was the first user of Notes. We spoke with ABB, that was the second user of Notes. And we also read the report, by the way, that most of the study that ITC did was around ABB and their experience on those notes. And obviously, there was something there. There was one thing that we were sort of missing in that spectrum, and that was part of the email stuff that really didn't exist at this time. But we figured out there was something we could add later. So we made a decision that we have been working with Lotus on many things because there's been a lot of work going on with Lotus and trying to have Lotus build spreadsheets, work processes, and so forth for OS2. So you also know why Lotus had a number of OS2 products in the early days. And that was, part of the work that we've been doing together with them. And they have been building these products, so we knew the organization relatively well. And the decision was then very simple. We actually going to buy Lotus. So $3.5 billion later, the largest hostile takeover ever at that point in time in the IC industry. And fueled very much because Lou Gerstner thought it was a good idea when he was presented with the plan. It was also a challenge in IBM because IBM had not done a hostile takeover before. And in the past, all the acquisitions IBM had done had ended up in real disasters because IBM had no idea on how to deal with an acquisition at that point in time. I was in a very interesting meeting. It was my first, last and only meeting with Gerstner, but it was interesting anyway. He was instructing, we were a tiny little management team that was assigned to actually work on the integration of Lotus into IBM's Office. And he made a very short presentation in the room, and he said, guys, I did not spend $3.5 billion for you guys to step all over this asset. You'll figure out how to leverage it. Maybe that. So that was one of the margin orders. And we tried that, whether that was good or whether that was bad, difficult to say. But that's what happened. So if you look at Notes in the early years, there was a product there. It had some functions. As you can see, I'm trying to draw a little timeline here, so you can see the whole spectrum of what happened. So we started off with a product, and certainly email, but even introduced in late '94 with putting some functions in there, which was sort of rudimentary email. You probably also know, those who follow the story, that Lotus acquired CC Mail and had that as a mail platform and parallel to Notes. And there was a lot of internal battles on what to do with CC Mail versus Notes, and that was resolved in the end that it was Notes. That's history. In what cases we have the IDC report and we look at then what to do with that. However,
Lotus Notes. What the hell is it?
How you sell it? What is this? Is a software that coordinates business. There is no other technology that would allow us to do what we do.
8:30 in the morning, the phone rang in Jim Manzi's office. Lou Gerstner said, "Hi, I'm Lou Gerstner. I'm from IBM. I'm here to help you."
of things happening, IBM actually asked the Lotus shareholders to get rid of the board and set up a new board based on some people IBM appointed, and they managed the whole transition. The first years were characterized by, from an IBM viewpoint, no-touch policy, as Gerstner had laid out, but certainly a level of financially boosting the business in terms of running marketing, in terms of running development, and so forth, because it was still absolutely essential for IBM to drive this notion and technology. Almost a domino happened in these 4 or 5. As some of you may recall, we decided in 1996 a quick decision that says that the internet has started to live a life by itself. And web services and web capabilities were a new trend, and things that serve our web applications was a new thing. So we did not want a Lotus Notes client server setup anymore. We wanted a Lotus Notes client, and we needed to name the server differently and actually sell and market the server as a different set of technologies. And that became the Domino server that was announced with 4 or 5. And we started providing support for various recent capabilities. Many things happened around that. There was a lot of debates inside IBM about, well, what are you going to do if you have an HTTP stack? What stack are you going to use? And there was a lot of commotion around that. We ended up that Domino was using, a variation of the Apache HTTP stack, and what ended up was that was the one that was brought forward and kept forward, and actually is sort of the base of the code that we use everyone at IBM today in providing HTTP stack, where it's needed. We even had it as a separate product at some point in time. Someone would call something called a Lotus Go server. The Lotus Go server was at a point in time we actually could make a separate business with an HTTP stack, which also proves a little bit about technology that comes in waves, because technology has a tendency, if you start building stuff, you start selling it, and it is a business like an HTTP server. At some point in time, both Lotus Go, the Microsoft Internet Server, the IIS, and all that stuff, it became a capability of some higher life form, because it became part of the web application servers, whatever they were, from whomever. So selling a separate HTTP stack wasn't a business anymore. It basically went from being a business that you project, plan, and manage, until actually becoming somewhat of a commodity, and then becoming part of something else. That happens to web servers, it happens to high resolution displays. That was also at some point in time a very, very, very good high margin separate business. These days, an iPad screen with a retina screen and stuff like that is not a separate business anymore. It's just become a capability in some other life form. And that's how much technology goes. That's what we're seeing with email right now. That is going from being a business to becoming a commodity to some extent. And we've got to figure out what we're going to do with email going forward, because it is no longer a business. It will become somewhat as part of another life form. And that's that transition we need to understand. Anyway, we had also at that point in time a whole set of confusion about releases and maintenance releases and stuff. I think that we have gotten better in managing that these days, but it has certainly taken quite a number of years to get to that point. This is just, I'm taking some old slides I had some from other presentations I had, and this was one of the things we said in 1997 and said, okay, this is what we're going to do. Oh boy, was that interesting. However, that's
we entered the new millennium with 56 million Lotus nodes.
And it was great. We had a good fighter pilot there to drive the business, and we ended up with 56 million users at the end of '99 when we entered the millennium, which was actually quite staggering, because what we know here is that we are seeing a business that has sort of doubling year over year. There's not very many technologies that have seen growth like that. 100% compound growth rate is really unique. What happened, of course, was that attracted a lot of people. So a lot of people said, "Oh, this is something I'm going to latch myself onto. I'm going to learn this stuff. I'm going to use this stuff. I'm going to work with it because there's business here." That's the origin of a lot of the business partners, and I'm sure some of the people in this room noticed that same thing and got access to the technology at that point in time. which is what happens all the way, always. You know, finding good technology, it seems to be, you know, having a lot of, you know, traction in the market. So that's a good place to be. So people go there. The question is, what are we going to do later? Because look around, one of the problems we have is that everybody's involved with this technology is either gray hair, or rather old, or retired, or dead. So there came a number of years here where we had a continued steady growth. We were trying to structure the thinking around Notes and Domino. And some of you may recall the 9-box model that we were using at the beginning of the millennium to describe the solutions that we're building here. Funny enough, if you really start looking at the descriptions of what we're doing, it is actually quite similar to what we're pushing right now in the social business. Similar, it's exactly the same things. It's just a question of what technology you apply against the business problem you want to solve. The key thing that I believe we did with Notes and Domino, we addressed the long tail of application development. If you know the paradigm of the long tail, the question is, you have, you know, some concentrated people, developers, building applications with a scope for the entire organization, and they spend all their time on thinking and doing this stuff for the entire organization, but there is a built-up demand for having some business people that need to use IT to support the thing they want to do with their business. But somehow we need to cut down the time from thinking in the business professional's head to having technology supporting it. And if you can find something like Notes, where actually a lot of business people immediately certainly would use it, because this thing about tweaking a template was straightforward for a lot of people. And one of the reasons that this latched on in so many organizations was that the engineers, or you know, whatever they were, business managers, they didn't have to go to IT to get their problem solved. They could actually fix it. So time to value was cut down dramatically from going through a traditional IT project. So they addressed this question of a huge volume of application needs, addressing departments or individual people, but with a huge business impact. You would never get those projects to an IT department, because when you started to explain to the programmer what you wanted this programmer to do, it would never match, because you could not necessarily transfer your skills, your knowledge about the business to the programmer, so that he or she would actually do what you asked him to do. And that was what was unique about some of the other technology we talked about earlier, like what we do with UKL, we do with Notes. We can cut down that cycle time. We can address the long tail issue of application development. Now let's see what else happens here, because we had some interesting years. There was a little stop in building products because we were actually trying to figure out how to cope with the technology and actually cleaning up a lot of the stuff in the technology, as you may recall. So we finally get a couple of years into the millennium, and we shipped version 6, or ND6, that we started at that point in time. That focused on a lot of things on total cost of ownership, scalability. There's a lot of good functions that went into that release. This is also what I characterized as the workplace years. If IBM were ever to sell sushi or market sushi, I know you would call it cold dead fish, which I'm sure would be very attractive to a lot of people. Like we started renaming all the products, so it was IBM and Lotus Instant Messaging and Web Conferencing, also known as same time. And there was some very, very good thinking from the marketing side in rebranding and renaming everything to all sorts of complex things, so no one had idea what it was. And there were variations of it, because there was not only the IBM Lotus Instant Messaging and Web Conferencing, there was also the IBM Lotus Workplace Instant Messaging, and it just went down from there. It was very, very confusing. We did fix it. But what happened was that we did a lot of thinking about where should the technology actually go. And some of you may recall there was this whole workplace product that came up where we really re-engineered everything and started over and building the whole stuff. The thinking there was that, and this is all due respect to my colleagues at IBM and thinking about technology, that it was very difficult for some of the part-timers in IBM to accept that there would be people from the outside that had the capability to write good server software. So the ability for Domino to actually be a server was always questioned by some of the more hardcore IBMers that thought that real technology cannot be built like that. Real technology has to be running on JVM, has to be J2E, has to be, brought up and built on the Web3 application server. So to prove that, we set off to actually build a whole stack of things built on the Web3 application server. Now the challenge is that if you look at Domino at that point in time, we're talking about technology that at this point in time have a 10, 12 year maturity. It's amazing what 10, 12 years of maturity could do to stability and quality of delivering a service out of our server environment. And we never succeeded in recreating anything that came even close in terms of performance, or functionality, or stability to what Domino delivered. So the whole thing was almost dead on arrival. And we had this whole thing cleared up at that point in time, and said we're going to stop this nonsense, and we're going to focus our efforts on using Domino the way it is as Domino itself is an environment for servers. If you look at the technology inside of it, a number of server stacks inside Domino advances that extremely well. We're still going to do that. However, we did see a lot of value on the client side on what we had built out using the Eclipse framework as a way of building user interfaces. And we also saw a way forward with the Eclipse framework that would make it much cheaper for us and more effective for us to build support for a diverse set of workstations. So if we wanted to make sure we could ship something like notes on various Windows derivatives, on various Linux derivatives, on Mac and so forth, it was obvious that from a development viewpoint, it was much more advantageous to build this on Eclipse. So the decision was that we would continually work this client side of it around notes because that made a lot of sense, whereas the server side we would focus on Domino, and actually we would rebrand things back. So we dropped these description names and went back on the same time and replaced and don't doc and things like that. And basically, we went out, and it happened in June of 2005 at the German Workings Group in Hanover. That's why it was called Hanover Release, where Mike Logan at that point in time, or Kevin Kavanaugh at that point in time, announced the Hanover Time, which was to become Domino 8 at some point in time. It took a while to get it done, shipped, and delivered and ready, but it came, and you can argue whether ND8 was a good release or bad release. It was a release, and certainly we got that straightened out, I think later. Interestingly enough, business actually went pretty well forward. So we actually ended up around, we had about 125 million notes installed at that point in time. We actually stopped counting this up also because something else happened in the marketplace. I should have put that here, because in 2003, you had 118 million notes times installed. That was a number that IDC reported. IDC report those numbers based on input from the vendors, and we had input the 118 million number to IDC, and we did that based on the cumulative sales of note seats, which is a very simple measure. How many have we sold of this one? We're not trying to double count, so if we sold it, we sold it. And the way the licensing works is that you have sold a license and you have a perpetual license. Whether you have it active or not, that's a different case, but you've sold a license. So we know we have actually sold 118 different users who will be using notes, or at least being entitled to use it somehow. What surprised us was that at the same time, we had seen our market share with Microsoft. We have been increasing that market share year over year from 98 and going forward. Every year we grabbed market share from Microsoft. Consistently grabbing market share from Microsoft. In 2003, the market completely turned around and we said, what on earth is happening? Because it seemed as if that Microsoft had doubled their install base overnight. And no one really figured out what was going on, but they reported that number to IDC. IDC then put out a little paper that you can still find on the internet that says that they have stopped putting credibility to this market share evaluation because the way that Microsoft announced their licenses. Because one little thing happened in 2002 and 2003, Microsoft introduced their enterprise agreement. The enterprise agreement is a very interesting track for people to sit in, because it guarantees you're going to pay more money than you ever dreamt of for Microsoft software. The other thing it also does is it gives a very, very, very interesting way of measuring stuff, because they said that if you have an enterprise agreement that covers your population, and if you have Office then you have the entitlement to use Outlook, i.e. this is an Outlook user. So even if you were, a company was running Notes and using Notes and Domino, Microsoft counted them as Outlook users also if they had an Office license. And most of our customers certainly had a Microsoft Office license also. So we suddenly saw the numbers. There was a reason why they suddenly doubled their install base, because it started counting everybody. Which made that number completely irrelevant. Now that's, a lot of people did not pay attention to that. So suddenly we had this debate with people that we were losing market share. So wait a minute, we're not losing market share, we're selling more year over year. So either the market has grown dramatically, and thus we're losing market share, or something else is wrong. And that debate is still going on for some Christ's sake. Crazy thing. I don't even care about market share. I mean, it doesn't matter. It's a solid business. And by the way, at this point in time, in 2011, we ended the year with more Domino server used on active maintenance than we've ever had in the history of the product. So since people are actually paying for it, it seems as if they're using those servers. So we right now have more processors in the world globally running Domino than we ever had in the history of the product. So this stuff about me losing market share and going away, I don't think so. I don't think so. Anyway, we had, the last number we actually did ourselves was about 140 million that we counted in 2008, and we haven't really counted since. What this allowed us to do, this whole switch to the Eclipse base, was also for the first time ever, we got some positive reactions out of Garden Group. Garden Group is interesting because ever since I started working with them in 1995, that was when I met Tom Austin the first time, they've been projecting that Notes was dead. Their book came to dead every 50 years since 95. Not really true, but they had. The death was not really true. But interesting enough, in 2009, they suddenly presented this, where to their own surprise, they had to say, well, I mean, the future is, are we really saying this? Notice those. And basically because we actually, from an IBM viewpoint, delivered what Gartner had sort of been projecting as being a future workplace for a business professional. How do you integrate all the stuff these people need to use? At that point in time, they hadn't really made the complete mental change that says that yes, we need to provide an application platform for the applications and information that the user need, but maybe that application platform doesn't have to be a rich client. Maybe that's a web delivered thing. And if you look at what happened over the past couple of years, we've done a complete transition over to everybody using iPads, smartphones, whatever, and a diverse set of workstations. But really, most people are much more dependent on having a web delivery of stuff rather than having a rich client that will aggregate stuff for them. I use a Notes client, and I know most of you guys use a Notes client, and it does wonders for me. But I'm equally well off as long as I'm connected to the network using a browser delivery of stuff. But anyway, we got this good report from Gartner, so that was all good news, and we started, shipping more releases. 8.5 was a very interesting release because we really started to look, root speed on the Traveler and looking at the mobile transformation. And over the past couple of years, everything we've been doing on mobility and on Traveler has really served us very well and gotten us very good revenue from everybody in press and analysts, because we are indeed doing something better than anyone in the industry in actually making sure that we just extend the application base we have to these kinds of devices. It also raised another interesting question, because this also, started the whole thinking process on what is mail really and how to use mail. And maybe we think wrong in believing that you need a particular client to do mail. Maybe you need to think about it in a different way, that mail exists, and you have different windows or ways of viewing or rendering your mail depending on the situation you're in and what you want to do. And it was apparent that a lot of people found that it was extremely helpful and easy for them to use like iPhone, smartphone, whatever, to use a quick triage of the mail they have. Get rid of a lot of emails by looking at this. Managing a lot of stuff on the calendar by looking at this. So maybe, just maybe, this whole discussion about whether you use Outlook or Notes, this fight about who has the functions, and this one-upmanship on putting functions in there, was that really relevant to the end users? Because if you ask the end users, most people say they're very happy on using the smartphone or using something else from mail. So maybe that whole debate wasn't that relevant. And I certainly use now several ways of doing mail. I have a variety of phones I use. I have a notes kind of use, but it depends on what situation I'm in. If I'm going to write a complex mail, I'm not going to do it on this phone. The keyboard thing won't work. But I can certainly read a lot of stuff and handle a lot of stuff. Simple forwards, yes, no, book this in the calendar, works perfect for this device. And I get rid of 2/3 of all mail on this thing. So my mail backlog has dropped because I have various ways of doing a triage of mail. And that then leads to this whole discussion that we have right now on what we're introducing and announcing tomorrow on social mail as part of our connection setup. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But we think that is a much more important way of moving forward on managing mail. And I think we need to think a little bit about what we'll do with the domino technology here, because I think we need to understand that we have two different sets of things. We have the email stuff, and we have the applications stuff. And we need to find out what makes sense there. It was interesting because in the very early days, down here, you may recall, you were buying a domino messaging server that couldn't run applications, or you were buying a domino application server that couldn't run mail. And that was sort of the way that was licensed at that point in time. That's then muddied a little bit since, so we now have still have a messaging service, a standalone mail server, but now we have the enterprise server that does everything, or utility server that runs applications, but licensing is still only a statement in time on how we think the technology is being applied, and that can certainly change many times over. And that's something that we need to think about, because maybe we need to go forward in some very different ways. So, I'm sorry, one moment. One of the things we focused on a lot the last couple of years has been this, you heard that was announced a couple of years ago for Project Vulcan, the whole question of looking at the user experience and managing the information that flows your way. All the stuff you need to pay attention to beyond your inbox. Be that things that are happening in your social network, things that are happening in business processes that are alerts you need to take care of. And the question is, how do you actually aggregate that and make that available in a meaningful fashion for people so they can work with it intuitively rather than actually getting a complete overload of stuff. And I think that's what we've been trying to work on with what we've been doing over the past couple of years, both with notes and with connections, and you'll see how that all actually marries together very nicely going forward. Anyway, if we look back again, and let's see where we are. If you look at the technology, I mean, we've gone from mainframe to American computers, PCs, to the internet, and as Scott McCready pointed out, this interesting article from '94 about the IT industry, where he actually said, $10 trillion and what did we get? He was looking at the total IT spend ever had happened until that year. And he said one thing that actually holds pretty much true up to this period, is that nothing was really done to fundamentally change any process we work with. We automated some of them, we made them faster, we made more of them, we made it go in parallel, but we did not change any paradigm really in how we did business. Some of the people that adopted notes as an agent of change did certainly change a few things, and they took advantage of pushing computing close to a business professional and allowing that person to influence how he or she was driving their business, and had some impact there, but largely this whole spectrum of stuff did not change one iota in how we conducted our business processes, all running in the same way. A lot of people were adopters of this stuff in terms of adopting, groupware, situational application development by whatever name, but trying to address that long tail issue of application development. And also look at the huge volume of Excel spreadsheets that someone has created with macros in it that does stuff. It's exactly the same thing, addressing that long tail issue. One of the challenges, and sort of also, I hinted to that a little bit earlier, is that we did have some technology initially in Notes that made it easy for a business person to take a template and tweak it to his or her purpose. But we also built a rather more complex set of capabilities like NoticeScript, agents, and what we've done later, and even on all the stuff we did with IIoT, oh my gosh, and Call of the Geek had a wonderful opportunity to write stuff and do things, and became very deep and very complex. And we suddenly actually institutionalized application building in Notes and Domino because it became much more of a very special professional skill to build it rather than something a business person would easily take and adopt. Something more than that, because that's how technology will evolve as it develops. And the productivity of the people that understand how to build these applications is still unsurpassed. I mean, nothing will beat someone writing X-Pages stuff these days if they're trying to build any kind of actual type application. However, it also became institutionalized. And you've seen a lot of organizations, they locked down, they did not permit the end users anymore to create yet another database. Because there was complete chaos by virtue of the distributed nature of the domain servers. And if anybody could set up a new discussion database on Teams to do that, or database framework databases, there's a whole rack of stuff going on there that you don't know how to manage and know how to control. And it's always been the IT department's biggest wish that would lock down and things like that. They're trying to do that right now with SharePoint. Because you have SharePoint as this other file server on the closet, and proliferation of stuff all over the place that's largely uncontrolled and unmanaged. So most of these technologies fly in the face of IT because they allow people to do stuff the way people want to do it. But that's largely unmanaged. So while the IT department was spending time on converting their line of business systems using standard software from whatever vendor, because that was, better idea than going home, and gradually institutionalizing this, the degrees of freedom that you have in using Notes as a business person went away. I mean, in IBM right now, I can certainly write a Notes application if you want to do it, but don't deploy it on my laptop. I cannot put it in the IBM server because I'll be violating about 1,500 different rules. And I have no idea how to break those rules. If I could, I would, but it's not easy. So we start putting institutions and controls around it that limits the creativity that you can have with it. If you look more at what's happening here, email calendaring, they're recognized by now as essential business instruments from everything. Interestingly enough, if you go back to the beginning of the millennium, I don't want to do all those discussions, but I have a lot of them, where people are asking for return on investment stuff in email. I cannot do return on investment on email. I have no idea how to measure that. Unfortunately, and the same thing about instant messaging. How do you do return on investment in instant messaging? I don't know how to measure that. But it became accepted as a necessary business instrument, like telephones, email counting necessary business instruments. I'm sure, by the way, that most of the capabilities we talk about in what generically referred to as social software, in having ways for people to build, teaming, having team spaces, having ways of sharing stuff, having ways of running blogs or wikis and stuff like that, that will also at some point in time become viewed as a necessary business instrument. But we're not there yet, so people are still talking about return on investment on social software. Anyway, Microsoft still fighting to maintain this desktop paradigm that they have because that's the core of their business. We've got this whole groupware stuff that got institutionalized and moved over to the IT department. And actually, in many cases, the tippers, those that make changes in the organization from the early adopters, they're retired. Everybody else ran the organization. So we're sitting with a little bit of a beast. We've got to figure out what to do with it. And then most companies, well, not only have gone through various mergers and acquisitions, and end up with a patchwork of capabilities. And if I look today at most large organizations, sure, they want Notes and Domino. Sure, they want Exchange and Outlook. Sure, they want SharePoint. Because they got it all. Because it came from various sources. Or someone started deploying it because they could. Is there any business case to say we're going to consolidate on one email environment? I don't think so. All the larger customers I've been working with over the past couple of years, the conclusion is that sure, if you have a huge volume of that Notes Domino usage, it makes sense to consolidate Notes Domino, get quite a 50-man outfit. Sure, give them Notes clients. Or give them Domino the outfit, to be more precise, because they don't have to give them Notes clients, or just use the Domino infrastructure from the out. But if you have a mixed environment that's sort of 50-50, there is no business case for migrating from one to the other. It's dramatically expensive in OpEx and CapEx, and when you do it, you stop the organization, because my mail migration project is going to take you 1 year, 2 years. And while that goes on, you actually stop creativity. So maybe it's not that good idea. Maybe you want to do something completely different. Maybe you want to look at another level of technology that is going to cool over this environment, that can actually help you getting more free value for your money and still unifying these diverse pieces of the organization by introducing new technology rather than by replacing one with some stuff the others have. And I think the challenge right now is that everybody, to some extent, needs to break the mold and find out where we're going to go from here. Does this look like a picture you know from your organizations? Or customers you work with, or people you know? I think it's a pretty good picture of every point in Europe. But what has happened? Things have happened. Knowledge work has changed. People work in a completely different way now than what we did even 5 years ago. Lots of things have grown up in the world. They're not directly relevant to this. I don't think Facebook is directly relevant to business for its internal working, but it's certainly relevant for business in the way it relates to its consumers or relates to people in general for building and managing perception of that business. Same thing with Twitter, Google Plus, whatever delicious, name any of it. They're not directly relevant for a particular organization and collaboration, but it's absolutely critical that we use them in the marketing channels we have in the organization and we are ready from the adoption in what we do internally. Also, in about a year and a half, all statistics in Europe says that about half of all employee people, they're millennials, that says they have never known a world without the internet. They have never known a world where people smoke. They have never known a world where they have cell phone. I mean, we all speak about smoking, so you secretly that we hope no one knows about smoking because it's not good. But the world has changed dramatically. And they collaborate in a very, very different way. You post stuff on people's wall, or you leave them an instant message that they respond to. I don't think email is going to go away by the way. I'm not adhering to that idea at all. There's been tons of emails still because an asynchronous messaging capability is critical for so many ways to notify people. You can do something funny actually, which I enjoy doing occasionally. I did it on April 24th. I studied 24 hours of email on the internet. And there are a couple of sites where I can monitor, the origin domains of all emails transmitted. And on the 24th of April, I looked at it. So, do you know which was the domain that contributed, the highest contribution to email in that 24 hours? Can you guess? Facebook was Gmail was number 1. Facebook was number 2. LinkedIn was number 3. And together, they stood for 60% of all emails transmitted in the world. Is that going to go away? I don't think so. But maybe you want to think about the windows that mail, how you manage that mail, how you access that mail, and how you trash that mail, and how you actually use it. So I think there's a lot of things that we've got to look at here. The other thing that's clear is that mobility has really become the prime interface for most people. And we have certainly taken that decision in everything we do, that we've got to make sure that mobile comes first. Because it is what more and more people are going to see. And no matter where you go in the world, we find that the volume of users are basically having internet endpoints or user endpoints that are any kind of smartphones or whatever. In particular, if you go in some of the emerging countries or growth markets that we're looking at right now, Eastern Europe, in Africa, for instance, the primary device for everybody there is an iPhone, or maybe a Samsung, but most of it are iPhones. And that's really universal. So we better think about that in everything we do, build, and plan for. So if all this has changed, what is actually happening? We believe there's sort of a fifth wave emerging here, which indeed is changing completely how we work, and changing completely how businesses take place, how they're managed, how they're developed, and how people are working with it. There were two reports that I found very interesting. First of all, the McKinsey Quarterly issued a little report called The Rise of the Network Enterprise. Web 2.0 finds its payday. It's a brilliant article about the real values and actually a discussion of ROI on using some of the modern technologies. They actually published another thing here just last week, I believe, or 2 weeks ago, which further analyzes the use of this. Also, Forbes magazine had a very, very good article in the September issue last year that was called Social Power and the Coming Corporate Revolution, because they're also predicting that we are dramatically changing everything that's happening, and it's a complete new way of working, and we need to understand how we support that and capture the thinking behind it. And we can see from our business that what we have been doing with the connections part we have as a platform for doing social business. I know social business is a bad name. I don't have any better right now. Web 2.0 is not a good name either. But all the things that fit in that area, and if someone can come up with a name that will catch on, I can assure you that will trend very quickly on Twitter if it works. But I don't know what it should be yet. I haven't found it. But anyway, if we look at our business here, we have now, and this is all good for us, for the third year running, being nominated by IDC as the leader of that whole category of social business software, something that only existed for 3 years. And we still stand as the undisputed leader of social business software. We can also see that we have about 60 of the Fortune 100 companies using our technologies, either fully deployed or actually having some level of pilot deployment on looking at what we do. It's the most talked about thing in any meeting that I go to is what are we going to do about this whole social thing? And actually, from our viewpoint, I believe we have a very unique opportunity here and something that I am certainly pushing wherever I can, because rather than trying to fix this, should I migrate all my mailboxes to one particular mail server? Well, dear Mr. Customer, that's probably a very dumb waste of your money. Maybe you want to consider something else. How about introducing a layer that will allow you a web delivery of not only the mail from whichever environment, but also a way for people to actually share information and collaborate together. I'm not talking application development here. Just talking about this thing about sharing and working together. Maybe there's something you want to consider there. And we have certainly invested in building that technology so that we can provide you a layer that has the instant messaging, web conferencing, video, blah, blah capabilities, as well as the way to build any kind of teaming and sharing capabilities so you can move from sending to sharing in terms of all the information you work with. And we do that with a combination of connections in SharePoint. And it's very deliberate that we make sure that SharePoint integrates just as well with Notes and Domino as it does with Exchange and Outlook and as it does with SharePoint. Because otherwise we couldn't create this layer that would allow someone to unify all the things they're doing by what we provide. And we think really that it was a pretty smart idea to have people concentrate on, instead of spending their money on moving person A from one mailbox to another mailbox, then consider how you can create a team environment for your global engineers for that matter. So engineers in the organization can share information rather than worrying about whether the email goes from one server or the other. That's like rearranging the desk chairs on the Titanic, because how are you going to do that? Interestingly enough, the rationale for why you want to do this stuff and share and create the sharing stuff is exactly the thing that drove Loops in the first place. Because you could create this way of building applications for people to see and share. However, the technologies have shifted. We are in a new set of technologies. The advantage of using like the connections technology is that it's much more, if you will, IT friendly, in as much as you have the management of it. You can track what's going on. You have central deployment, central management. It is not this thing that grows organically without you knowing what it is and being able to control and manage it. So it actually solves a purpose by actually shifting that technology to a different platform. Also by now, Connections has about a 7-year, maybe 8, 9-year maturity in the marketplace to take the internal deployment of IBM that started before we actually went external with it. So it's by now very robust, scalable, and stable technology. And this really works as one nice integrated environment. So I'm not going to dive into the whole aspects of social business because I'm sure you've seen that or heard that elsewhere. But one thing, I mean, roles are changing. And we are seeing complete new ways for employees to work, for people to commerce with their customers, to reach the customers, and partners, and so forth. IBM just issued a new, different slide. Yeah, we've got nice people doing some of this stuff, both using Lookstone and connections. Some of them, these are basically connection references. There's one interesting study, by the way, if you want to read about the effects of using social technology in an organization. Kurt Wohlen, who's the CIO for Bayer Material Science, he had an interview that was published in Forbes magazine earlier this year, which is actually very interesting, where he actually comes back and after a long discussion, he comes to an interesting conclusion that after they went away from only using email as a way to collaborate, to actually run much broader levels of sharing, they found out that people start talking to one another again. They actually start using phones again. Because they're sort of being completely alienated from one another because they were using like email as a communication and collaboration form. But suddenly after they started sharing more intimately because they immediately share stuff with others, they actually started becoming more communicative, not just picking up the phone and calling someone. And they actually consider that a very positive trend that they get the employees or from various businesses inside the company to speak to one another rather than just sending emails. So they believe that they've achieved quite a dramatic improvement in their productivity by deploying some of these capabilities. What I wanted to say before was IBM has published a new CEO study. We do this, and every second year we run this CEO interview. We go out and interview 1,700 CEOs from all walks of life globally, and be that in any sector, including government and so forth, and trying to find out what are the key things that set a successful organization apart from the others. So what uniquely, or what are the chances for doing certain steps technologically that one organization is going to excel over another? I think that by now, these reports, we have the CEO study done on even years. We have the CIO study done on odd years. We'll do the same thing for the CIO community, now also extending to CMOs and CHROs. So we have all these C-level studies. I think it's by now, by far, the best source of information on executive thinking globally that is freely available for everybody. Go to IBM.com/IIBV, the IBM Institute for Business Value. Everything is available for download. By the way, they have a very, very nifty little iPad application where you can load all the reports on your iPad and drill down on all the analysis. It is brilliant. And it gives some very good thinking. The conclusion this year is that there are 3 things that sets a winning organization apart. We're looking at, what makes an outperformer be an outperformer, and trying to digest from what the CEOs are saying, what their particular organization is doing to be an outperformer, or things they have done that position them as an outperformer. And first of all, they come through that you've got to look at how you engage with customers as individuals. There's nothing new in tying your customers closer to you. That's not new. The new thing is that looking at how you use tools like Facebook, how you use tools like Twitter as target marketing tools are really, really critical for other organizations. And also how they build some of the stuff they do themselves into these applications. I'll come back to why I mentioned that. And empowering employees, nothing new in that, and stimulating collaboration and so forth, and make sure that you work in the whole value chain on innovation, sharing ideas, working together to achieve results. Everything pointed to something that's related to collaboration and sharing of information and having people bring ideas forward, being able to analyze and work with those ideas, which is exactly some of the things that we are certainly pushing. One of the reasons I mentioned that one with Facebook and stuff is that we talked a little bit about, Lookstone as an email environment, and some of the thoughts about how that's going to go forward. I'll show you in 2 seconds what we're going with it. But on the application side, there's something to think about here also. Because some of the stuff that we have with the X-Pages stuff we can do, and I know it's not perfect yet. And yes, there are things that still need to be worked out. You know, we're taking those steps, but we're all learning as we go ahead. One of the things we're doing right now is embracing all the open source capabilities, and we're adding some of the API capabilities in X-Pages, so you can start actually working with it and supporting things like Facebook and LinkedIn and other stuff. So you can actually start using that technology to easily build and drive the applications you need to put in direct contact with your customers through Facebook, which is a whole new set of capabilities that's sort of opening up here. That yes, of course, you would not hire someone that knew about Ajax and REST APIs and write stuff, but that's a different productivity level. X-Pages and say, hey, here's something that can allow you immediately to, your time to value in a Web 2.0 world is much shorter than if you do the traditional development here. And this time to value in an environment that's accelerating and you want to do something quick, that time to value is critical. If you go back to thinking about what we talked about earlier, in having the business professional come up with ideas that you wanted an IT person to interpret and do. What's the challenge in that model? The time to value. Because before you have explained what you want to do, and you see something, so there's a feedback from your ideas, it takes way too long. You lost your train of thought. So if you as a business person can do this correctly, that's good. If you cannot do it correctly because the technology still mandates someone else to interpret to you how to use the technology, you've got to find something that has the lowest possible time to value. That's how you drive productivity. So, let's switch a little bit to look at what we're doing. I put this slide up here with a little grain of caution because this is an idea or an outline of some of the near-term deliverables that we are making. This is not a committed plan, and this is just some of the things that we're thinking of, but I thought it would be relevant to share with you. But this will become clearer as times go on. First of all, I think a lot of you were expecting that we would ship Snowstone 854 social edition by a better name this fall. That was the intention also, but there are a couple of things that we looked up in the marketplace. As I mentioned before, mobility is key, but also support for what's happening generally in the market is key. We all know that Windows 8 is on its way out, and we don't want to start suddenly shipping something like this fall, and then needing to figure out how to synchronize quickly with Windows 8 later. So we're going to hold our breath, and what we're going to do, we're going to put a public beta out there with Snowstone 854 in the November timeframe, and then ship later, because we want to ensure that we first of all get feedback on this stuff, and we'll try to synchronize a little bit better with what's happening on Windows 8. So we don't have that in our way. We will put out a public beta. For those of you that are running in the design pilot program or on the beta for us right now, Cobra 4 is out there. Cobra 5 is being built. The first version of Cobra 5 was ready last week. I tried it. That's not ready to go. You can. I'll certainly urge you to later in a break whenever you have time to go to the IBM booth and have a look at it, because we're brave. Andy is running the latest Navy build. I'm not that brave, but we're okay. We're getting there. Cobra 5 will be ready and will go out here this week or beginning next week. Cobra 6 will be the public beta, and it will be functionally complete, in-user interface complete. It will just be, what's missing is the testing, and that we're working on. Then we will assume that we're going to go GA in first quarter 2013, and we will do an update pack a little later in the year. That's roughly what we think. Precisely what function we're going to ship when in this is difficult to say precisely. I know what we're going to do in the Code 5 and Code 6 will be functionally complete. And we'll talk about that now, but there may be more things that we end up doing. I just cannot say that right now. Connections release 4, which is also going to be a critical part of some of the things we do here, is that we're going to ship connections mail. We're going to announce it tomorrow. And I believe, but this is still has to be confirmed tomorrow, that it'll be available on Friday. But this is like, cannot guarantee that. But thinking is we're going to announce it tomorrow. We will do a Lotus Year edition around, January 2013. There'll be some updates in it because we also know that the first release of the connections mail, it's there, it's working, that's not it. We also know that people have functional requirements, and the minute you get something out to a lot of people, there'll be an avalanche of functional requirements you've got to look at because, of course, there are things that people need to get going with this one. And we are sort of considering a second half release 2 of connections mail that's going to upgrade to the functional level that you would probably expect to be fully production ready for everybody. We'll talk a little bit about some of the things in here. So, first of all, 8.4 continues the work that we did in 8.3 on integrating some of the capabilities from connections. So you have access to the profiles capabilities, so status updates, understanding what people is available as a plugin, of course, in Notes. You have access to the files capabilities. You can drag and drop files and share them inside outside emails and so forth. That's, of course, still there. Nothing has changed in that. We continue to do that for good reasons. Some of the things that we are doing is we're going to change, there's going to be a discover page. You can go look at the demo we have out there if you want to see the details. I'm not going to run it live here because I'm not that brave. So I'm using some screenshots. But there's a discover page that allows you to understand better how you work with things and how it works. And then, of course, you have an updates page, which is giving you the updates from your business and social networks. So you capture the events that are going on around you, and they will, of course, get rendered in the update page. And inside the update page, things that you click on will work in a sort of integrated experience so that you can keep your train of thought, because you don't have to go to different environments to do stuff. Like if there's a link to something, you have direct access to wherever it links to. If there's a link to an application that does something, you run that application embedded in where you are. So you do not have to lose your train of thought. We will manage that for you. You don't have to switch to another environment to do stuff. Also, we will make sure that you have sort of the context maintained no matter what you do. By the way, if you've tried it, or you've tried CNC before, you can switch the user interface. So you can switch to what we call the One UI in IBM One User Interface that we're using now consistently across all the parts. So whether you're using a port setup capability, or action stuff, or note stuff, it all uses exactly the same look and feel. I have personally found that I find this look and feel extremely appealing and very, very helpful to work with in 2012 timeframe. Will I like this in 2015 when other things have happened in user interface paradigms? I don't know. But it's certainly, very good as of this thing. And I think that user interfaces in many cases are fashion statement rather than anything else. And so, there goes there. If you look at Notes 7 right now, oh boy, is that bad. If I look at Notes 8 right now, oh boy, is that bad. It wasn't when it came out, but now it is, 2 years later. I think that this One UI is very helpful the way that I see it right now. The embedded experiences have been done throughout Notes, so also in the inbox. So things in your inbox, you don't need to click on links and stuff to do it. If you open mail, you process whatever that mail is coming to. So you directly get access to things, or directly can comment on things that have been shared with you. So you have a very tight integration between the Notes desktop and your social capabilities delivered out of set of connections services. And there's some new ways, by the way, This requirement, I think I heard about this the first time in 1998, when people said that, why can you not sort your inbox the way that Outlook is doing it? We said, oh yeah, we'll figure that out. And we said, we figured that out now for 10 years. Now we figured it out. So you can now set in your mail that you want it categorized by date, so you can see mails from today, or yesterday, or rest of the week, or rest of November, or all the stuff. So it's now there. You can email you can categorize it like that, which is nice, and we should have done this years ago, because it's one of those things people keep saying that, but I use an Outlook. Yeah. You can create your own view that does a similar thing in those. And everybody has been bending over backwards to make template changes to do this stuff. But now it's in the product. The other thing we've done, Embedded Experience also works for other applications. I'm going to go through that here. You can see them in the demo, it's much better. But one of the things like someone done on the calendar side, so you now have like a rolling month calendar, and even better, you have a weekly calendar view. So you can get a quick overview of your calendar. Little things, and you can say, but gee, I already have that on my iPad. Yeah, you have it on my iPad, but you also need to have it in notes. So you can have it in notes also. It's one of those things where it has some reverse influence when that is on. Interestingly enough, on iNotes, we are really striving to make sure that the notes experience and the iNotes experience, which says the web-delivered client experience, are alike. Functionally and user interface-wise, completely alike. So there's a very significant set of updates in iNotes 8.5.4, and I'm going to go through the details in terms of user interface, in terms of how you navigate, how you do plugins, how you do things like live text. This is now supported in iNotes, so all those capabilities on reacting on specific text constructs is now available in iNotes as well. The calendar views provide similar things that you've seen in Notes. So I think this is actually quite important. I'm not going to go through the details here, but I think it's very important that we make sure that it becomes the same experience, whether it's on the rich kind or browser delivered. The browser delivered work is, of course, increasingly important as we change to looking to have mail provided as a window to a mail service, no matter what that mail service is. On the Domino side, we're doing quite a lot of things. Some of you probably know that already. On the specifically the authentication side, so you can actually have single sign-on. Well, yes, so with like Facebook and LinkedIn and stuff like that, which you could not before. And for some people where they needed the SHA-2 support, it's been very important in some countries in Europe who has been mandated by government that have that support in there. Like in Czech Republic for some reason, it's mandatory. So there are several places that have wanted to do that. The other thing we do is on the Edge page and stuff. I mentioned a few things there. There is, again, we're driving a lot of information on Edge pages through OpenECF, and that's not going to change because iBlock is continuing to work on writing stuff that way via OpenECF, and I think that's a pretty good way of actually keeping the community active and keeping people informed about what's going on. Some of you have also heard about the Notes application player, because one of the missing pieces on an organization that wants to webify what they do. I mean, I have seen a lot of people that say that gee, we're not going to spend time or resources on redoing this application to become next-basis application. But we still need to change the desktop because it's way too expensive for us to maintain the desktop. Some people, they fall into the trap and try to do Citrix stuff, which is like an interesting, expensive way of extending your world by perpetuating a desktop paradigm that you get rid of. But hey, people still do it. So we thought of doing something else. And the thinking is very simple. Why don't we make a program to a browser that actually is an NSF processing engine? And you all know that there is a base client in Notes, and it still sits there hidden inside Notes. There is the basic client. And the basic client is a full NSF processor. So how about changing that basic line into being a browser plugin. So you can actually run it from Internet Explorer or Firefox. You can support Citrix. Again, this is matching customer demands more than anything, and we can do that. And I mean, the baseline plugin is a 50-60 megabyte plugin. A 50-60 megabyte plugin these days, is that prohibited in the browser world? Absolutely not. A lot of people are shooting down not larger chunks of code for stuff they want to do. So we decided this is going to work. Technically, it works fine. You can see the demos also, just to have some screenshots here. You run, and I mean, what happens is that the baseline does all the processing, so it understands those script, etc., of course. And actually, it does all the rendering also, and just feed it through to the browser to get to the glass. So, I mean, if it looks like this in running the Notes client on the desktop, it will look like this running as a plugin on Firefox. And the only difference you note is that it says Firefox here, whereas it says Notes something up here, and there's some slightly different drop-downs because depending on whether it's the browser or whether it's Notes, but the application works the same. Forms works the same. Even the workspace can be rendered, of course, because there were client inside that. Replicator page, everything works. The only thing that we don't support on the browser plugin is actually the mail template. Because if you want to do mail delivered in a browser environment, use iNotes. We provide a full experience on iNotes that's more tuned to doing a mail experience in a browser. And that will run on Internet Explorer, on Firefox. The only thing we couldn't do with the iNotes was render a full Notes application. And I'm sure some of you have run into this frustration when I set an application that someone sent me a doc link inside a mail to a Notes application. It works fine on the Notes client, but when I open that doc link on iNotes, it's sort of a dead link, which is very annoying. But if you have the plugin, it's no longer a dead link because the Notes link, of course, works with the plugin because it just runs an NSF app. Chris, you have a question?
How many people in this room have seen this before?
If you haven't seen it, go to the IBM stand or come, see me because we can show it. It's a very, very nicely working piece of code.
Pretty cool.
Now, as many people have said, the future of mail is social. What I mean. And we are now starting to provide this connections mail. It will be announced tomorrow, the Connections 4, which is, it's not a product. It's not a new mail service. It's a new window to your mail that you can access wherever you are. And you will always have access to it. You can tailor it to what you want in it and the device you're using. Simple to use. You have access to mail. Think of it as the way you would view mail from a smartphone, or do mail triage, calendar triage from a smartphone. This is exactly the same thing. It just renders wherever you are. So if you sit in a browser working in your social environment, you can of course pop up your mail and access it. Cardiff Group, again, in the bottom screen you can see it, says also that very soon you won't be able to see email and social networking separately. Email will not die. It will in fact have more flavor and will be more integrated. Absolutely. So we're still doing pretty much what Cardiff Group is saying that they agree is the direction. You can go see the connections mail also. We can show it also in the demo. We can show the screenshot. The idea is that we will gradually enhance the connections mail so we can render really any mail when you got it. The question for us is to provide the user interface and get that right. In the initial release, we'll support a domino posted mailbox, one exchange posted mailbox. We will also support other mail environments in the future. Of course, we'll support our own smart cloud hosting, and we'll support Part 3 and 4 because that will be like this going forward. So that any mail service that you happen to use, we will render. So we'll consolidate your mail into that user interface. This is not a new thought. It's exactly the same thing that you'll see, for instance, on your smartphone, where you actually tick how many mail services you want to subscribe exactly the same thing, providing you an easy access to mail. So, as we talked about in the very beginning, these are the first steps on completely commoditizing mail and making it an element of a higher life form somewhere. And email as you know, as such, it's not going away, of course, but it will always be there, but maybe in some other life form. It's not a specific time to go buy and invest in, because it is there. On the phone, in the environment, no matter what you work with. The way it looks is that, you know, there's a drop down in this page that shows you your mail. And you can, you know, act on it immediately by, you know, replying to or making things for follow-ups. You have things like one-way markers also and so forth. But it is like a first cut of getting access to your mail. Inside your mail, of course, you can, you know, do the same thing you always did. Actually, you can do a level of rich text in your mail, which you cannot on the smartphones. So it goes a little bit beyond what the smartphone mail can do, but it's still that functional level. I'm not going to go through the details here, except that we will support, you know, Domain 853 and onwards, and will support Exchange 2007 and 2010, so that we can provide really, truly a unified layer using these connections and maybe combining at the same time in terms of real-time collaboration. So instead of having people, you know, converting from mailbox A to mailbox B, either, but we can provide this integration layer that gives you so much more value than the cost you would have of migrating from A to B. So we think that we're really on sort of the right track with what we're doing here. So I made this picture to end up with here. This is not a scientific picture, and this is sort of my personal rendition of what on earth it is we're trying to do on a slightly, you know, in a big elephant way picture. So this is not technical, this is not scientific, this is not the endorsed product strategies, but this is pretty much what we're doing. First of all, on the client side, yes, we build a node-rich client, we'll continue to do that. And there are so many people that are dependent on that client, but I'm not seeing that client as a separate marketplace going forward, because I think that the days of rich clients are counted. I think that you know, it's going to move more. If you want to have something aggressive on the device, look at the application for this conference. There's an HTML5 app that does it. And I think that's much more the direction that we're going to move in terms of providing things that are resident on the device, no matter what that device is. But I'm also sure that there are situations where you would use the volume of data, the interactivity, and the capabilities that a rich client provides. But is that going to be something an organization is going to put out to the entire user base? I don't think so, because it's too damn complex to manage and maintain. If people have the ability or the skill to maintain it and manage it themselves, be my guest. But otherwise, it's a very, very expensive proposition for organizations to go that way. I think the zero install web apps is critical, and that's a question of being able to have a web rendering of whatever client capability you need. So spanning the traditional, you know, browser, laptop, desktop devices, it's typically focused on the zero install web app, like iNotes, like SameTime is doing, like Connections is doing. Having a node-rich client that's a full integration application environment, absolutely it's there, but I still don't believe this is going to be the client for the masses. It's not going to go that way. And then we've got another thing, we've got this whole mobile world. And whether we like it or not, we need to focus on installs on mobile apps. You cannot build one app for one, you know, every device. It doesn't exist. The mobile world is not that mature yet. I mean, there's iOS has its intricacies. There's variations of Android has its intricacies. There's Windows Mobile 7 has its quirks, and now Windows Mobile 8, which will also have its quirks. And you cannot make something that's going to run everywhere. And by the way, some application environments have embedded apps that does some of the things you want it to do with more or less well-defined APIs into it. So it's a patchwork of stuff that's out there right now. Eventually, if you look back at this in 5 years' time, I'm sure that HTML5 has matured to a level that will look back and look at this and say, hey, they were crazy in this part of the decade in 2012-13, because of course if you just just have built this on a standardized HTML5 environment. Sure, it's not there yet. So we need to build special apps for whatever device we go up to, which is why we do have a connections app you can install, there's a same-time app you can install, etc. We have to do that. All of these clients will consume some specific services, and they roughly fall in a number of categories. Of course, there will be a mail service, and there is a domain mail service. We'll continue to have domain hosting mail, and render that mail in a number of ways. NRPC is one of them you render mail, but I think the predominant ones are going to be some of the different protocols, ones like social mail or mobile mail, something like that. Of course, we'll have some real-time collaborative services that continue to build out at the same time. And we'll have the whole application set of services that I think will have a very separate life because it's going to focus on the Web 2.0 type applications. It's going to focus on delivering productivity apps that you relate to your customers, to your partners, or use internally to augment your social capabilities. Or, again, as a traditional rapid application development environment. But it's a complete separate. This is very, very separate from the rest of the things that we focus on doing, because this is like a development type world, which is different from the other environments. Yes, this development type world will be able to aggregate stuff out of the social services, out of the mail services, out of the real-time services, but it is a different layer and a different set of capabilities that provides applications in that environment. And last but not least, I think we have a level of application services you can argue that is a part of the connection services because this is the brokering of events. This is understanding the activity stream. This is the true support for the open social tool standard that basically understand how you capture business events, how you capture social events, and how you aggregate them and filter them and make them available to the right people. And I think pretty much that this is the picture on how we can go forward. Now, the thing is that I think it's very, very critical that we as a community actually use and understand this development set of capabilities and try to make sure we push it out there, have people adopt it, have people use it, and understand what we can do with it. Also, we need a level of advocacy in the community around it, so that whenever you with your peers or these other things, we got to push this stuff. No one else is going to do it unless we do it. And we need to rejuvenate the whole community. I'm not passing no judgment or comment about being states in the room, but we need to rejuvenate the community. It's a big, big challenge. If you go back to remember one of the first slides, this is my last slide anyway, so I'm just going to go back to one because this truly is, this is a perfect picture of technology adoption. And it stabilizes itself. That's the total life cycle of technology that we're having in this picture. The question now is, how do we reinvent this? We think we have the right elements to do it, but we're at an inflection point because we actually got to make sure that we rejuvenate the community that works around this, because otherwise it's just going to go away. Because if we are the only ones that can do it right, boy, it's not going to be perpetual. We're going to build the products, that's not the issue. And I mean, to IBM, this is a huge business. So there's no one in IBM that's going to walk away from this. We're going to be dragged away from it if we have to. But we also need to make sure that the community is active and the community is alive. And therefore, like Uffe, the user group, our user group are really critical in driving the advocacy in the community. So we are dependent, as ever, on you guys, on being our advocates in doing this stuff. So that's what I wanted to cover today. I just want to show you my last pick because I have a thank you slide, I'm sure. Otherwise it wouldn't be me. Yes, I have a thank you slide. So, thank you.